Hey guys, this is Booligan with Airsoft Retreat, BooliganAirsoft.com and Airsoft Insider Magazine. You may recall a few weeks ago we took a very quick firing demonstration of the Tippmann Arms M4 Carbine. This revolutionary gas-powered, I don't even know what to call it. I can't really call it a gas blowback replica because it's not. So we'll just call it the Tippmann. It uses its own special internal system to fire. But regardless, you recall we took a quick look at how this thing fires. Now this is prototype number 3. This is not the final model. The final models are working on it. It's going to be coming very soon. But for now, before this thing leaves my hands and goes back to Tippmann, I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a tour of how this thing works, some of its functions, and some of the things that I noted before the full review. Because my review of this prototype is going to be in the next issue of Airsoft Insider Magazine. However, the review that will eventually be going on my website will be of the production version once that one lands. A few things to note about the Tippmann Arms M4 Carbine. It uses a standard LE style stock. It's modeled after an LE, but it's got some modifications to it on a metal buffer tube. Now you can install different stocks. It's pretty close to mil spec. It's very, very close to mil spec. So depending on the size of your mil-spec stock, it will most likely work. Commercial stocks will work on it, but they will fit a little bit loose. And it functions just like a normal guy. You've got ambidextrous sling mounting points, a full metal receiver, metal outer barrel, and on this version at least, a polymer modular rail system. These rails can be swapped out. You can run it slick, you can run it with all these rails, you can put the rails at different positions. You've got a couple of different options here. You have polymer flip-up sights, front and rear, that actually work very, very well. They're both adjustable for windage and elevation. The rear is adjustable for windage using these dials. The front is adjustable for elevation using this dial right here. Now, the gun comes apart like any other, basically real AR pattern rifle. You pop this pin out, and it's a captive pin system, so that pin doesn't go anywhere. Drop the Tippmann magazine, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and put this guy forward. Inside this thing, you're not going to find anything really similar to any airsoft gun that you may have used before. Internally, what it really looks like is a Tippmann 98 paintball marker, at least on the upper. The bottom uses a modified version of Tippmann's response trigger, which is it is a pneumatically actuated, essentially full auto trigger. You can adjust the rate of fire by turning this small screw right here. You can adjust the velocity by turning a small screw in here. So that way you can set it to whatever your desired FPS, and the FPS range on this one was a little high. The FPS range on the production one will be between about 300 and a little bit over 400 feet per second. I was able to crank this guy up to about 500 feet per second, but this is a prototype and is not the same as the production version. You've got a valve here, which is how you adjust it from gas in mag to gas external. Now, we would do that changeover, but I don't have the parts handy right this second, but it's a pretty easy changeover. You undo this screw, which on this prototype, this thing's very well used and abused, and this screw is not 100% locked in there. So I tend to lose this screw sometimes. The production version will be much better. But you can easily change it out to running a special magazine, which is Tippmann's magazine here, which holds a 12-gram CO2 capsule in the top. So that way it's essentially just a self-contained gas operating system. Alternatively, if you want to run regular AEG mags, you can do that. You just have to run an external air supply. Now, unlike Polar Stars and guns like that, which people think this is just some iteration or rebrand of a Polar Star, it's not even close. Excuse me. You can run this on essentially unregulated CO2 at about 800 psi. And if you're running an HPA rig, you want to set your HPA rig to about 800 psi. The nice part about that is that the difference between a regulated HPA rig and a CO2 rig, the price point is staggering. A standard CO2 remote line runs about 30 bucks. CO2 tank costs about 25 bucks, and that's it. That's the extent of your investment in an external air system. Whereas if you're running HPA, your rig's going to cost usually between $100 and $200, sometimes more than that. Your tank is going to cost between $80 and $200 or $300 because the tanks can get absolutely crazy. And your investment is just a lot higher with an HPA setup. This can run CO2, and that's fantastic. You'll notice here that there is no bolt. This is all kind of molded in. You do have the front of the operating cylinder, I guess you could call it, and this little guy here that loads the gun. When it's cocked, it's in the back position, and it will then feed a BB when you fire it, like that. This is also your hop-up adjustment point. You adjust it using this small hex screw right here. Now this does have a few cool features. It has an anti-jam feature. So basically, if a BB gets jammed in the barrel, there are two pistons that move in this system. The rear one is what basically operates the gun. The front one is what loads and fires the gun. If you do get a jammed BB in there, only the rear one will fire, and it won't continue trying to feed BBs into it. So basically, it won't make your jam worse. You'll notice, hey, I'm not shooting any BBs out. Let's get this jam cleared, and you're good to go. For those who like modifying their guns, which that's me, a few things to note. As mentioned before, you can swap out the stock pretty easily. You cannot swap out the pistol grip easily because while it is similar in design to a standard AR pistol grip, internally it does have some differences to allow for this gas system and to fit over the engine, if you will, that fits in the bottom of the receiver. I'm not sure if the aftermarket or Tippmann will be working on aftermarket grips. One can only hope, because while this grip is nice and comfortable, you can put, the different sleeves and stuff that come over it, but, I like to have, a Magpul grip or a Tango Down grip or an Umbrella Core grip or some other option for that. Magazines, again, if you're using the CO2 internally, you have to run the Tippmann mag, holds 80 rounds and has gas capacity for 80 rounds. You run out of gas about the same time you run out of BBs, which is nice. If you're running external air, you can run basically any AEG magazine. The outer barrel, which is metal, is proprietary. It is a special design for Tippmann that they came up with. However, it looks very easy for them to be able to come up with different external barrel lengths, or for the aftermarket to do this. So I would not be surprised if we see different length outer barrels in the future. The Delta Ring is a relatively standard assembly and can be unscrewed to expose standard receiver threads. So, what that means for you, if you want to use a drop-in rail kit, like a Metal Knights Armament Company or a Mad Bull, like an Omega rail or something like that, it will just drop right in, no problem. If you want to run something that actually has its own Delta Ring assembly, like an NSR rail or pretty much any other free float rail that's out there, you can do that. This will unscrew just like a normal AR. You could pop this front sight block out if you so desire. 2 screws and the cross bolts come right out and it slides off. And you can install anything else. And I've tested this by doing an Omega rail, by doing a Knights Armament Company type rail, and then by doing an NSR rail, and the thing fit fine. You just might need some of those little metal spacers that come with most rail kits to properly set it up for the height, if you will, of the barrel in relation to the receiver. But otherwise, the thing is ready for customization, especially once, and hopefully if they come out with different barrel lengths, because a nice setup would be running this with a really long barrel and then having a short barrel setup, since it is so easy to change the velocity, set it up essentially as 2 totally different guns depending on what field you're playing at. Now, internally, for upgrades, the gun does use a standard AEG inner barrel, which is fantastic. They went with a 6.06 inner diameter, which is good. It's not too tight, not too loose. So you shouldn't have any issues if you don't clean this thing for a while, if you don't run a swab down the barrel every now and then. The thing should still fire just fine. You shouldn't have any jams. But it uses AEG barrels. So if you have a cocktail of AEG barrel and hop-up that you like, try it out in this, and it's most likely going to work pretty well. That is accessed by simply unscrewing the Delta Ring, pulling the whole front assembly off, and the inner barrel comes with it. So it's a very, very easy system for swapping out those inner barrels. So in closing, about the Tippmann Arms M4 Carbine, I am very, very much looking forward to this thing. To be 100% honest, the gun is one of the few guns that I'm actually very excited to come out. I've been very pleased with the way it shoots, been pleased with the way it feels, And honestly, I think this thing is going to really revolutionize the sport of airsoft as we know it. And I know that's big words, but I really believe that to be the case. So this guy will be available. MSRP at the current, as of today, as of this video, is about $450, which, considering the guns that this thing is being compared to, Polar Stars and Daytona guns and things like that, is a great price in my opinion, especially considering the rig that you can buy to run externally is inexpensive, about 50 or 60 bucks, and you're running external CO2. So be sure to check out the full review of this prototype in the next issue of Airsoft Insider magazine. And for the full review, you're going to have to wait a little bit for the production one to get into my hands, but it'll be on Booligan Airsoft and Airsoft Retreat. As always, thanks for watching.